Throughout the animal kingdom, animals engage in 4 common and distinct behaviors, also known as the 4 F's. These F's stand for feeding, fighting, fleeing, and mating. Or, in more family-friendly terms, romance dancing. Feeding allows an animal to meet its metabolic demands required to survive and thrive. Fighting allows an animal to settle competitions and to gain access to limited resources such as food or mates. Fleeing allows an animal to escape from physical danger, especially from predators. Lastly, mating is required in order for an animal to pass its genes on to the next generation. These 4 behaviors are so important for an animal's survival and reproductive success that we see them across the entire animal kingdom, ranging from insects to reptiles and, of course, to us. In CritterGarden, I wanted to design the behavior of critters to represent these 4 core behavioral patterns. To achieve this, I turned to designing a state machine. In programming, a state machine is a model or script that uses logic to determine exactly one state among a finite number of possibilities. So, for example, if our possible states are hungry, aggressive, scared, and fertile, a state machine will tell a critter they are in exactly one of these states at any given time. In order to design my state machine, I first had to consider which in-game factors will contribute to determine a critter's current state. As it turns out, the design of an abstract state machine closely resembles the way a real animal's nervous system determines its behavior. In real life, animal behavior is largely determined by 2 factors: external and internal stimuli. External stimuli refer to sensations from outside the body, like sights, smells, and sounds that trigger a response in the nervous system and ultimately lead to a behavioral response. Internal stimuli refer to events occurring in the body that influence aspects like hunger and mating drive. These events are largely controlled by the endocrine system, also known as hormones. In the game world, the ability to detect external stimuli is determined using basic collision functions. Critters are able to detect the biome they currently inhabit, the presence of their favorite foods, members of their own species, and potential predators within a certain radius. On the other hand, internal states are determined by local variables that increase or decrease on their own over time. Critters have 2 main internal variables: a hunger variable that decreases over time and a fertility variable that increases over time. Critters also track the consumption of specific food items that might be required for breeding. Together, these different factors make up the resulting state machine. By default, each critter is in an idle state, where they're programmed to randomly wander around and sometimes move closer to members of their own species. Each gameplay step, the state machine first checks if there is a predator nearby. If there is, then the critter enters a scared state, where it is programmed to move away from the threat. If there is no predator nearby, a second check looks at if the critter's hunger variable is less than 50%. If it is, then it enters a hungry state. While in the hungry state, another check occurs. If the number of competitor critters of the same species is greater than the amount of food presently available for that species, they'll enter an aggressive state, where they become programmed to kill the competition. If this condition isn't met, then critters remain in the hungry state, where it's programmed to search for food. Now, if the hunger meter is greater than or equal to 50%, then there's a check if a set of breeding requirements are met. These requirements include the fertility variable being at 100%, along with a set of other requirements that are unique to each critter. If these are met, the critter will enter a fertile state, where it's programmed to seek out another compatible critter for mating. If these conditions are not met, then the critter remains in an idle state. Lastly, regardless of whatever state a critter is in, the state machine will continue to run from the beginning. This means that any higher order state will automatically be overridden by a lower order one. For example, if a critter in a fertile state enters the range of a predator, it will then enter a scared state. But the same isn't true if a critter in a scared state meets the requirements to enter a fertile state. So, there you have it. I hope that by attempting to simulate real animal behavior, the critters will interact in a lot of unique ways. In the comments below, let me know if you've ever played another game that approaches virtual behavior in a similar way. And while you unwind with some critters and chill, please consider subbing to the channel and wishlisting CritterGarden on Steam. Take care!